Okay, so then let's just look at what we need to study in the second module. Okay, so from here on, we in the previous portion we have tried to understand the quantities of water generated, what are the systems of sewerage that we have to carry the wastewater or stormwater and things like that. So in this module 2, we will be looking at design of sewers, how we are deciding the size of a particular pipe based on factors that we consider as in terms of quantity or discharge that we are calculating based on our previous whatever we have understood. Then pipes are allowed to flow under various conditions, full, 3/4, half, etc. So under these conditions, how do we design the hydraulic elements for a sewer? And we are doing it only for circular sewers, only that is there in the design this thing. But it will be a very good or interesting topic for you to look at whether we can find designs of, in different other shapes, because commonly we all use circular sewers and it's easier to design with that. But there are places and situations where other shapes are being used. So it will be interesting to look at what could be the design of such shapes for different sewers. That is the first half. The second half is about disposal of the effluents. Okay, so whatever sewage is being generated, what is the influence of that sewage either on a water body or when we are trying to make it less harmful to the environment, what problems it can cause when let out into the environment and such things. And the last one that you see there is quite a complicated equation, but that equation is what gives us an idea of how, when you dispose of waste without treatment into a natural water body, how the effect of the contaminants or organic load which is present in your wastewater is going to influence or is being influenced over time and space by the different actions that are happening within a natural water body. So we'll be taking this on a little later date. So today, instead of starting with this, we will be directly going to the second half now, and then we will be talking about this part by the next Tuesday or Wednesday class when we are getting. Okay, so let's look at what we need to see now. So first, disposal by the disposal of the sewage can be done by two basic methods. Okay, sometimes in this classification I have not written it, but normally when we say disposal, okay, it can be done before treatment and after treatment. So that's what we need to understand. In sometime, even if we did not say it is very ancient times or anything like that, some years earlier, and even there are places which are doing that even now because they don't have proper treatments. And there are cities that sometimes when heavy rainfall and things like that happen, the natural quantity of the sewage generated becomes more, and hence many of the treatment plants are unable to handle that load and they just let off the untreated sewage. So basically, when you think about disposal, that disposal can be either after treatment or sometimes even before treatment. Okay, so this is what the first thing that you should understand about the disposal of effluent. So when we are trying to dispose the wastewater, you can do it by either natural methods or you can do it by treatment methods which will treat your wastewater to a a certain degree and then dispose that into, again, you can do it only on land or water. So when we talk about the natural methods available for us for disposal, we have basically only two places where this can be disposed. Either we dispose it into water, which we use the term dilution, and or you can dispose it on land. Okay, that is by using it for agriculture or sewage farming or whatever it is. So these are the only two basic methods available to us. Now, what do you mean by the term dilution? This is what everybody does. So previously, all of you know that Bombay was a congested, or is even now, and had a lot of industrial growth, and population suddenly exploded, and they had a lot of wastewater getting generated. And what Bombay was trying to do was, they used to try to take all the wastewater via pipelines off the coast, little deep into the sea, and they just used to dump it there. Many coastal cities follow that pattern even now. So dilution was a method by which we could reduce the the sudden impact of the heavily polluted wastewater by allowing that to mix with large volumes of water, so that the effects become a little less. That was what is meant by dilution. So it is one of the most practiced natural disposal methods, and this is done with the assumption that there is plenty of dissolved oxygen present in natural water bodies, and if we are mixing, compared to a large ocean, when you are mixing, say, so much MLD of 30 MLD or 50 MLD of water, or 150 MLD of water that is getting generated as wastewater, that will probably get mixed with the large volumes of water and should not be causing much problem. But over a period of time, when environmental consciousness started gaining momentum, it was understood that this waste is causing a lot of harm to the aquatic life that is present there. And now, for everybody, it has become mandatory. So you would have read articles. Many of you would have even experienced that neighboring lakes in areas in Bangalore itself have experienced apartments and other big residential societies just connecting their wastewater line underground into a lake system. Okay, that's what happened to many of our lakes, which were frothing and giving out very bad stench, is because the neighboring areas, they used to find that when you have a large water body like a lake present, they used to find it very convenient to just let out their wastewater into the large water body. So beginning maybe when the number of such apartment complexes or residences doing that was small, the lakes weren't getting harmed in such a bad manner. But when that became too much, plus the quantity of wastewater generated by these big apartment complexes where there are large number of houses, then it was slowly starting to emerge or show what is actually happening within the lake because of that. Choking of the lakes get crowded with aquatic, that is what we call as weeds of water hyacinth and things like that. And ultimately you have a bad stench. You have heard about frothing. Frothing usually will not happen if it is domestic waste alone. There could be a lot of industrial waste also. Otherwise, detergents and things like that, if they're excessive, can lead. But you have seen pictures in the newspapers or on TV as to the amount of froth that comes out from such lakes, which is actually floating in the environment and landing on cars or vehicles that are going. So to that level, if it is there, then there will be industrial wastewater also mixed with that. So people are still doing it, or making that a practice. So modern day, we think that if we are giving some treatment and then diluting the treated wastewater into the lakes, okay, so now what has happened? They have started rejuvenating these lakes, okay, and in a lake complex itself, if you go to some of the bigger lakes like the Kundalahalli lake and things like that, there they have started the rejuvenation work. How they do the rejuvenation work is, whatever existing, there is hardly any water there because everything has got choked with weeds. They dredge the bottom, all these sediments which are, you know, the nutrients that are getting run off. There are a lot of phosphates coming from household detergents and things like that. All that gets settled at the bottom, and they allow the, what is the eutrophication, the algal blooming to happen within the lake bodies. So they dredge out all that. They make sufficient pathways for the diversion of direct rainwater entry also, that is the runoff coming from the roads, etc., also into the lake itself. They create treatment units as a part of the lake so that the waters from the surrounding areas are passing through several levels of treatment and then entering into the lake, so that the lake survives or retains. So then whatever small amount of pollutants are remaining there will probably get used up by the aquatic life that is present there. So dilution was one main method by which they used to make use of to handle the vast quantity of wastewater that is getting generated. And for that, you needed to have a water body. Now, what are the conditions which you need to look at if you are thinking about dilution? So right now, untreated wastewater, you shouldn't still think about it by doing the dilution. Okay, but at certain periods of time, like excessive generation or heavy flooding has caused problems which will probably give a reason for dilution to be used as a method of disposal of the waste. But if you have to use dilution, the sewage should be fresh. You have basically two terms when you talk about sewage. You have fresh sewage and septic sewage. I think from the word itself, the word septic sewage is very clear. Fresh sewage will not be foul smelling. It will have an oily, greasy smell, but there will be no stench because the degradation process has not started. But once the degradation process is become active, then the color, smell, everything of the sewage starts to change. When you look at fresh sewage generated, it will have a grayish or brownish nature in terms of color. But whereas when the sewage turns septic, it will become dark black in color. And the degradation process causes foul smell to emanate from the flowing sewage. So the sewage should be fresh if you are thinking of dilution as a method of disposal. Currents. Now you have a stagnant. Actually, if you look at it, a lake, however big it is, may also be pretty stagnant, except for some cases where you may have, rocky or other such bottoms, so that the water as it flows the path gets divided while moving through the rocks and things like that, which allows for more mixing of oxygen. But otherwise, any standing body is mostly not having much currents. Okay, but whereas you can think of a stream or a river which is flowing with lot of movement in the water. So not only the flowing action, but the currents or rapids or falls that are present in the water, all that is actually very favorable to allow for dilution, because the more such things that are present along the path, the more oxygen mixes with, or the air mixes with the natural water body, and more dissolved oxygen will the faster the clearing up of all this waste which enters into the water body, where sewage is free from floating and settleable solids. So here we will talk about oil also, oil and grease and heavy organics, which will always be settling at the bottom. So remember when I showed you the picture of an oxidation pond, okay? I told you that when substances go and settle at the bottom, chances for anaerobic conditions to be developed are much more. So if you have more of floating matter like oil, grease, etc., they tend to form a scum on the surface. And these scums will prevent oxygen from dissolving into the water. The underlying layers will definitely start becoming anaerobic under these conditions. Where thorough mixing is possible, there you can think about this. That is the same as currents and things like that. Dilution water should have large quantities of dissolved oxygen. So if you talk about a fresh natural water body, you can compare, or as an experiment, if you people take a river water which is flowing and test for dissolved oxygen, okay, or if you take a pond water, you will definitely find significant difference based on the amount of oxygen that is going to be dissolved there. So what is it? Anmol, are you there? Can you unmute? Anmol, please unmute. Manjusha.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So according to you, okay,
Yes, ma'am.
I am asking you if what is it, water or a river water, which of this would be expected to have higher? Do you remember the definition for the term dissolved oxygen?
Yes, ma'am.
DO. So
DOD.
DO, correct? Dissolved oxygen. How much is required for a natural water body? Why is it required in a natural water body?
Ma'am, dissolved oxygen, ma'am. Why is it required?
Yes. Yes.
Ma'am, for aerobic conditions, to carry on aerobic conditions.
Okay. So by carrying out or maintaining an aerobic helps what? It helps in which way?
Ma'am, for the aquatic life that is under the water.
Very good. Very good. How much should be there?
Ma'am, don't know.
Don't know.
No.
Okay, minimum of 4 milligram per liter should be there for good survival of aquatic organisms. Okay, but that was not the question right now. My question was, I am giving you pond water and I'm giving you a river water. Okay, which would you expect to have more DO under natural conditions? I'm not talking about any pollution or release of anything into the water. Both are naturally existing under without much pollution. Which of this would you expect to have more dissolved oxygen and why?
Ma'am, maybe river, ma'am.
River will have more.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, why?
Ma'am, when compared to pond, river is a little more huge and.
Is it because of the hugeness of the body? Then I'll give you a comparable size. I'll give you a large pond or a large lake. Will that make a difference? More? What will make a difference? See, things could change. If that river is highly polluted with wastewater, then it may end up with a lesser DO than a pond. But if I'm telling that both of them are significantly polluted, a river will have more fluids, more movement, currents. Do you expect that in a pond?
No, ma'am.
Pond water is still, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Lentic, Lotic, and all you people studied all this, I think, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So in the pond, the movement of water is less. Hence, whatever dissolving of oxygen or air is happening is little controlled. But in a river, there will be, because of the rapids, currents, a river will maybe having waterfalls in between them. It may have large rocks over which the water will be moving and falling like a jump. So all those will cause more amounts of dissolving of oxygen. Clear?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, you can mute. So while diluting, water should have huge quantities of dissolved oxygen. And the last one is where you don't have to take your pipe to large distances. That's why I was talking to you about Bombay. Bombay used to once upon a time do this. Take it via pipeline deep into the seabed, out, and disperse it there. But now all these cities have also tried to keep their wastewater from going untreated into the natural water bodies. So that's your first condition. Next is condition essential for treatment before dilution. Wastewater is harmful to aquatic life. Okay, so if it is in some way, that is, best example I would say is an industrial wastewater. See, domestic wastewater, okay, the harmfulness to aquatic life may be if you have too much of organic solids which are going to deposit at the bottom. But otherwise, toxicity may not be there. Whereas industrial, that's the second point there, in fact, okay, that will cause a problem. Now, where receiving waters are used for inland navigation, I will not even say inland navigation, I will add the second point to that. At Melkote, you saw that the water was being taken for drinking purpose, okay? So imagine if the surrounding buildings or from the village, if they were dropping their pipe of wastewater directly into the lake, they're thinking there's so much of water there, no? So it will get diluted there. You can imagine what would have happened. So the same thing there. So if they are using it for sources of water, waste, especially if the wastewater is septic compared to fresh water, where the wastewater is not likely to be dispersed because of tides, winds, cross currents. So if the water is very still, then dilution doesn't play a big role, or you cannot even think of dilution. So that's the so what are the favorable conditions for dilution in terms of what to say, receiving waters? We need to look at that. So for that, we use the term self-purification phenomena. See, at some places maybe where you have seen streams or rivers, especially in semi-rural areas where you have visited, you might have seen that people are disposing. You will see a lot of cattle washing going on. People will be washing their clothes and things like that by the riverside or this thing. But after a few meters from where all this activity is happening, you will see that the water has regained its freshness and water looks again more aesthetic and better looking. This is because that every natural water body has got its own revival mechanism, and that mechanism is called as self-purification phenomenon. So when wastewater effluent is discharged into a natural water body or a stream or river, the organic matter that is present there will be acted upon by the natural microbes. Every water will have the natural microbes present. It can be of bacteria, it can be flora form also, phytoplankton and things like that, whatever they are. And these bacteria will convert those organic matters basically into ammonia, nitrates, sulfates, carbon dioxide, and the process of oxidation, the dissolved oxygen in the natural water body is getting utilized. We have also studied another term which is related to this, I think all of you will remember the biological or biochemical oxygen demand. So if there is huge quantity of organic waste, the oxygen required will be more. So indirectly, the BOD gives you the amount of oxygen that is present or that is getting utilized, cannot say present, getting utilized for degradation purpose. So when the organic matter gets stabilized, okay, so initially when you are adding the waste, at that point there will be a rise in pollution concentration. But as the water moves along in different stages, we will come to what are the zones, etc. after this. The purification process happens because of the microbes that are present in your water, and it is also facilitated by the presence of sunlight, the presence of temperature. All that we will come to just after this. What all will be contributing towards that. But with all those facilities, you will see that the natural purification process happens. And water quality standards will be based upon how the natural cycle in the stream takes into action and gets itself purified by, there will be three actions that are commonly happening: physical, chemical, and biological processes that happen naturally in nature. So in a treatment plant, we try to do all these processes. I'll give you an example: physical, sedimentation tank; chemical, coagulation; biological, a filter. So we are trying to recreate the systems that are naturally there in nature, okay, into a treatment system to do our treatment. But when natural waste or when wastewater enters into a natural water body, our nature environment itself is able to take care of this by various physical, chemical, and biological processes. Okay, so that is the best mechanism that can happen when you are disposing. But what are we doing? We are not giving a break to that waste disposal. We are disposing more waste than what is actually flowing in the river or the stream, so that then your lakes or rivers are unable to handle. Otherwise, nature has its own mechanism to take care of all this. Okay, so all these sentences are very the same as what I was trying to tell you. DO, when it drops, you remember as 4. If it drops below 4, then your higher fish forms and all will have severe difficulty. Okay, so you have to have minimum of 4 milligram per liter of DO, dissolved oxygen, if self-purification has to happen. Because once your aquatic plants, microplankton, all phytoplankton, whatever it is, stops doing the function, no more self-purification. Self-purification is a natural phenomena. And this natural phenomena is what we have tried to recreate as treatment processes in our treatment plants. Understood? But that happens in nature very beautifully, unless we meddle with it. Okay. Now, factors that affect the amount of DO available: oxygen demanding waste. Again, I told you, high BOD. A waste, when I say high BOD, it means a waste of high organics. Why organics? Inorganics will not consume as much oxygen, and organics, to break down, the amount of oxygen required will be more. Plants add DO during day, but remove it during the night. Respiration of organisms remove oxygen. Temperature. Okay, oxygen quantity is inverse or is inversely proportional to the temperature. That is, when temperature rises, oxygen concentration lowers. So oxygen gets liberated into the atmosphere when your water gets heated up. So when you add something extra into the water, like an effluent, you are actually raising the temperature. The natural water body, whatever temperature is there, will be definitely lower than whatever comes as wastewater. So when you add wastewater or some contaminant into the water body, you will naturally increase the temperature of the water body. Okay. Now is the important one. The factors affecting self-purification. Very, very important. So first we talked about dilution, and we understood that dilution happens when small quantity of waste or organics are dispersed in large quantity of water. So here I have two terms which is called as QS or QR, which is nothing but the quantity of sewage, and suppose I'm talking about a river. Okay, quantity of river water. Okay, so meter cube per second, discharge. We are talking about discharge here. Now, I have some amount of BOD already present in my river, some amount of BOD that is coming via the sewage. Now, what will be the final concentration of BOD? So when I write C here, the resulting concentration is the resulting BOD or the polluting nature that is going to be present when two liquids are mixing. What are the two liquids mixing here? The wastewater and the water that is present in your natural water body. This can be given by this relationship. You should remember, because later we will be doing problems based on, I told you one equation, Streeter-Phelps equation and things like that. There they will tell you that certain quantity of wastewater of certain BOD was mixed into a stream having so much of temperature, so much of natural BOD, etc. What would be the resultant concentration of BOD? So then the concentration of BOD in your sewage into the quantity of sewage water plus the concentration of BOD present in your river water into the discharge of river water, that is meter cube per second of river water divided by the total discharge. That will give you the average concentration of BOD that is present. When the dilution ratio is high, large quantities of DO are available. What do you mean by dilution ratio? Suppose I have taken 10 ml of wastewater and made it up to 100 ml. So 90 ml of dilution water I have added. Okay, so then my dilution ratio becomes 10 by 100. So that is the concentration of, or that will be the dilution ratio that I'm using. And in that case, the DO will be very high. And if DO is maintained at a higher level, aerobic conditions. Somebody wants to ask something, else mute, please. Please mute. Okay. Aerobic conditions will exist because of the dilution. This will, however, not be there if the dilution ratio is small. Dilution ratio becomes small when there, instead of telling 10 ml and 90 ml of dilution water, I am saying 60 ml of wastewater and 40. Please dilute. I'm sorry. Please mute. So when I say dilution ratio is small, that means the amount of wastewater that I'm putting into the stream or the river or the lake is more. In that case, the dilution ratio will be large. So the first factor which affects self-purification is dilution. And in dilution, you should remember how you can calculate the concentration of BOD that is going to be present after the two liquids have mixed. So each liquid has its own discharge, its own concentration of BOD. When the two mixes, the combined flow will have a certain concentration, and that is what is depicted by this particular equation here. Okay. the remaining factors. So the first factor is dilution, and I had that equation and things like that. So I have put a little more here. Here we will look at water current. Everybody knows what currents are. They are certain movement within the water which will allow for dispersing of the wastewater. So if currents are present in water, and currents are usually seen in fast flowing streams, rivers, etc., small currents will exist in lakes because of when wind blows on the surface, you generate a small wave, and then the wave carries over and currents can develop. Undercurrents are also there and surface currents are also there. Undercurrents are seen mostly in tidal wave and those type of oceans and things like that. Even in flowing rivers, you talk about undercurrents, but in stagnant water bodies, undercurrents will be less. So if you have currents being present, the wastewater will mix up thoroughly with the water body. High velocity will improve the concentration of dissolving of oxygen into the water and reduces the time needed for your river or water body to get back in its original shape or original quality. So when you have more water, more oxygen and more movement of water, the action of the organisms that are present there will be activated because it has got food, it has got oxygen, it will do the degradation process faster. So few meters, not even kilometers, from the point where the disposal of waste has happened, you will see that the water has started regaining its original form. Okay, that's water current. Now, what has temperature got to do with it? At low temperature, so you imagine a country which has got freezing temperatures. Okay, there the temperatures are very low, and there are organisms that work at low temperatures. But you know that in nice warm temperatures, there are wide variety of organisms that are going to be working. So the bacteria or organisms which are doing the decomposition are severely restricted in the case of low temperatures. Hence, decomposition will be slow. Though DO will be more. Low temperature, I told you, as temperature increases, DO concentration gets lower. Lower temperature, DO concentration will be there, but organism activity will be lower. So it's like a no-win situation. You have DO, but the organisms are not going to be very active because of the very cold climate. Understood? So temperature, at low temperature, the activity of microbes is low, hence decomposition will be slow, though DO will be higher when it's at lower temperatures. At high temperatures, the self-purification of the stream takes lesser time, even though the DO may be slightly lower because of the raised temperatures. The availability of a wide variety of microbes that are functional in the warm temperatures will help faster degradation. The next is sunlight. Where does sunlight come into picture? We studied about it during your oxidation pond also. Sunlight helps certain type of microbes to absorb carbon dioxide and give out oxygen, which will assist in the self-purification of the river or stream, whatever. Sunlight is also a natural disinfectant, which will stimulate or encourage the growth of algae, which are phytoplankton, which are very useful in producing oxygen during the daytime. But if you have too much of algal growth, then you will have a problem called as eutrophication. All of you would have heard this from your environmental studies itself. Eutrophication is a condition where too much of algal blooming is caused, which will cause the water body to become choked. But else, the presence of sunlight will help to have more concentration of oxygen, disinfecting effect in the water body. So, and then the last one is rate of oxidation. Oxidation, you know, is the oxidation reduction process that is going to happen. The organic matter which is present in the wastewater is oxidized by aerobic bacteria. As long as oxygen is there, aerobic bacteria will or organisms will act. When the oxygen level becomes very low, the anaerobic organisms will take over. That's when you will get methane in marshy land. You would have heard where marshy lands are existing, methane comes out from the ground naturally. Understood? Paddy fields, you get methane. That's because of this anaerobic thing that is happening. Okay, so oxidation, organic matter will present in the waste will be oxidized by the aerobic bacteria utilizing whatever DO is present in the water. This will go on till all the organic matter is getting converted because it is food for the microorganisms. And the stream becomes more clear and more capable of absorbing more amount of oxygen from the atmosphere. So these are the various factors that affect the self-purification of the river. So let us river stream. It's a very important question as far as your exams are also concerned. So we are talking about dilution, then we are talking about water currents, we are talking about temperature, we are talking about sunlight, and we are talking about rate of oxidation that can influence this. So we looked at the various processes that are available to us or methods that are available to us for disposal of effluents. Okay, we have only two methods. One is natural waters and the other is land. Okay, in natural waters, we can do it either without treatment or after treatment, though generally it is better to do it after treatment. Now, when we come to the methods of disposal, on land, if we are doing it without treatment, we will have a lot of problems. We will be talking about this a little later. But we need to dispose of the wastewater in such a way that the stream can regain itself after some time. And that is possible only with certain conditions. These factors which will affect them are the dilution, the water currents, the temperature, sunlight, and the rate of oxygen. I hope that is very clear. Now, we have one more important topic that is called as zones of pollution in a stream. Now, this cannot be actually demarcated. Okay, from here to here, it is going to be like this. No. It depends on all the other characteristics of the stream that we talked about earlier. How much of oxygen is there? What is the quantity of organics that is being put by the wastewater? What are the types of microbes present? What is the nature of the flowing? Are there currents in the water? What is the temperature? All these factors will decide this. But when wastewater is being disposed at any particular point in a stream, it actually gives us 4 zones. The zones are called as zones of degradation, zones of active decomposition, then zone of recovery, and clear water zone. So I think from the term itself, it is very clear to you. Zone of degradation, the place where we are inputting that inlet from this sewer or outfall sewer is letting out the wastewater. That will be called as zone of degradation. Some distance from that also, the zone will be called as zone of active decomposition, because in that area, the organisms will be constantly eating into these organics that are present. Some distance from that, you will have the zone of recovery. So this could be kilometers away, this could be meters away, depending on all the other factors that we talked about earlier. Okay, so zone of recovery starts. And after that, you will see that the clear water zone, that is, the river or stream has come back to its original form. So just let us look at zone of degradation. This is the zone situated below the outfall sewer. So you can imagine a point where into a river, the nearby areas, the sewer end is dropping the wastewater. In this zone, the water becomes dark and turbid, having formation of sludge deposits, because everything is coming together and it's just pouring down. So whatever is coming, solids, etc., will form a sludge like at the bottom in the river there. Now, there also, if your river has got good spate, river is flowing very fast, then it will get carried away. Else, that will be the situation there. DO will be reduced to, suppose you have a DO of about 8 milligrams in your river, definitely it will come down at that point because the waste has got so much of BOD with it. There is an increase in the carbon dioxide content, and reaeration and deoxygenation will come back later, but definitely you can understand from the term removal of oxygen and getting back the oxygen. Reaeration is getting back, deoxygenation is removing the oxygen. Though conditions are unfavorable for aquatic life, fungi, bacteria, and the smaller species will be present there in the sewage sludge. The decomposition of solid matter takes place, and anaerobic conditions may also be there because this is a place where all the solids going and settling down at the bottom. So there definitely the anaerobic conditions may be present. Zone of active decomposition. So the next zone. So the water is carried away, some of this, and the next zone is zone of active degradation or decomposition. This zone is heavy, has got heavy pollution, may have gray or dark colored water, DO concentration may fall, it can go down to zero also because the organisms are constantly eating into the organisms or organic matter and hence using up the oxygen. You may find the presence of anaerobic organisms causing decomposition, giving out methane, hydrogen sulfide, carbon dioxide. One thing you people should remember is if aerobic decomposition is happening properly, only two end products, carbon dioxide, water. But if anaerobic decomposition is happening, you will have methane, hydrogen sulfide, carbon dioxide, or nitrogen. All these components come with anaerobic decomposition. That's why that egg smell because of hydrogen sulfide or that foul smell of methane will be present only if anaerobic decomposition is happening. Fish life is absent almost, but bacteria and those type of things will flourish. Okay, in this particular zone, fungi also may reappear in this particular zone. However, towards the end of the zone where the decomposition is reducing, DO may get back slowly. So you should remember it as stage by stage. So it may get back up to even 40% level. Next is zone of recovery. I will show you a graph of this later when we talk about oxygen and oxygen sat curve. We will come back to this and I'll show you a graph. You will understand it much better with that. Zone of recovery is now your water is flowing, organisms are acting, but after a distance from that, you will see that there is some change happening. Water is trying to get back to its original color, shade, etc. Here, the process of recovery starts. Stabilization of organic matter has started to happen. And due to this, you will see that the DO content is rising. There will be some minerals or stabilized forms of nitrates, sulfates, etc. And all the microscopic aquatic life will slowly start reappearing. So you imagine how nature is. When that pollution goes, again life starts. Okay, so slowly it will all be coming back algae, fungi, etc. Fungi will definitely decrease a little, but algae will start to grow again. And that area is called as the zone of recovery. Last zone is zone of clear water. So here the natural condition of the zone has come back. So if we have a natural flowing stream, this is the way in which natural processes will take place. The water comes back to its original state, DO will rise to the maximum dissolved condition. Okay, oxygen will again come back to its balanced form, and recovery is said to be almost complete, and all the other type of organisms will come back. There may be pathogens, nobody can kill all the pathogenic because they are also organisms. Only thing they are disease causing. So they could be present, and that, leaving that aside, your water would have come back. Even in natural waters, pathogenic organisms will be there. It's not that all pathogens are coming because you have deposited. It is definitely coming from waste, but it can come from anywhere. It can come from runoff or whatever also into your water body. So right now you have reached the place where your water body has regained its original state. These are the zones of the pollution which can be present in a stream. So I repeat, zone of degradation, zone of active decomposition, zone of recovery, and clear water zone. Okay, Sanjana. Sanjana, please unmute.